What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why you should buy the iPhone 11 in 2022. This has been an awesome phone just using it. I'm really surprised with this phone, especially considering the price. The cheapest is on Amazon is $338. It's a very good deal, so I'll drop that link down below. This is a renewed, refurbished version as well too. I usually buy my phones off of Amazon or eBay. So I usually always have a good experience, just in case you wanted to know. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that I really like about this phone is actually the design. The design still looks extremely modern. It actually looks pretty similar to the iPhone 13, just, the cameras are a little bit different on the 13. Of course, it's just set up differently, but honestly, if you switch this around, it looked the same. So this still has a really fresh, nice looking look to it. Still looks really good. And I also do prefer this curve on the older iPhones. So the newer iPhones have those sharp edges. This one fits in the palm really nice, so it doesn't cut into the palm or anything like that. So it's just more comfortable to hold, in my opinion. Not a super heavy phone, not super light either. It's kind of has a good weight to it. It has a glass back. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. And it does have an aluminum frame on here as well. So it still has that premium feel. And it just does not look like an old phone to me at all. I think it still looks really good. The design still looks modern to me. The next thing we need to talk about is the Apple A13 chip. That is my next favorite thing on this device. So if you were thinking it's an older flagship phone, how is the performance going to be? The performance is actually still top notch on this phone. It is extremely good. So even if you're gaming and stuff like that, you can play pretty much any game at high settings. So Call of Duty, PUBG. I'll go ahead and drop a gaming test for this phone. But performance wise, I was super impressed with just how well this A13 chip has kept up over the years. It's extremely fast when gaming. It doesn't get super hot as well too. The base model is 64 gigs, and then you also have on here 4 gigs of RAM, so it does fine with multitasking and stuff like that as well too. And of course, you have your iOS 15 on here. And the good thing about when you buy, these older iPhones is that these phones actually have a really long lifespan. So this phone will probably get another 5 to 6 years, maybe even more, of major OS updates. That is how just fast this phone is running. I don't see this phone not being able to get updates anytime soon. So as far as that's concerned, you're set for updates. Speed wise, it's still extremely fast. I'll go ahead and show you guys. I mean, look at these Geekbench scores here. Just absolutely awesome scores here. So just opening up applications, web browsing, everything is just super speedy on here. I rarely get lag on this phone. Even when I have a ton of things open, it just seems to perform really well. So I have zero issues with performance on this phone. So if you're thinking about this phone, speed wise, really fast phone still. Alright, next would actually be the display on here. So the display on here, while it's not a super impressive display as far as the specs go, it's a liquid retina IPS display. It's 625 nits, so it gets fairly bright at 6.1 inches. So it is a pretty good display size here, and it's a 720p plus display, and it's 326 for the PPI. So it's got the True Tone and all that stuff on here. But here's one thing: a lot of people say that the IPS displays are easier on the eyes. Now, it's very debatable, but that's something you would have to look at in person. But that's one, I guess, benefit with the IPS displays. But obviously, it's not going to be as good as the OLED displays as far as the color and the blacks and stuff like that. But these are really high quality IPS displays. Even when they came out, these give off very good color. And also they get fairly bright outdoors, so I wasn't struggling super hard when I went out and took pictures. So I think the display is fine on here. Again, for your average normal person, the display still looks good on here. And from what I've heard from Apple users is that they actually prefer the older notch over the newer notch in the newer phones because it doesn't stretch as far down. Which I totally do understand. But the display on here is fine. So for looking at videos, watching movies and stuff like that, it's a pretty good display. So I don't have any issues with it. I don't think your average person isn't going to isn't going to complain about the display or anything like that. I still think it looks pretty good. It has good viewing angles as well too. Now, next is easily the cameras on this phone here. So, and I'm going to get into those comparisons later on, but here's the thing that the iPhone 11 has over the iPhone XR and the new SE 2022. This phone has an ultra wide camera and those phones do not. So the ultra wide I think is an extremely essential camera as far as a secondary camera goes. So the specs on here, it's a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It's using 4K 2430 or 60 FPS, and then you have a 12 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 2430 and 60 FPS. Image quality surprisingly came out much better than I thought it was going to come out. I was really happy with the detail that this thing gave off as well too. Dynamic range was pretty good. The color was pretty good on here. The ultra wide, it kept the color pretty close to the main lens as well. White balance was fairly good. So the cameras on here, surprisingly, it just kind of surprised me at how good they still were. Even in 2022 here. So as far as image quality, I think it does a really great job. My selfies came out pretty good. I really like the skin tones. I wasn't getting that weird gray kind of skin tone that you get with the newer iPhones. So I was really impressed with the cameras. I think anybody that buys this phone, you can take a shot and it'll look good. So if you're in good lighting, it'll look great. Decent lighting, it'll still look pretty good. So obviously it's not going to do that great in low light like the newer iPhones for your nighttime shots, but it actually does a pretty good job, guys. And I'll also show you guys the video so you guys get a feel for that as well. Alright guys, here's the iPhone 11 video. Now the next thing I want to talk about was the speakers. So you do have stereo speakers and they are pretty nice sounding. So you can actually hear the top speakers putting in a lot of work with the bass. It is a really nice full sound. It's super loud. The vibration motor on this phone is also pretty good, so you get a nice feedback with that as well too. Also, some other additional features is that this phone of course has Face ID, so that works really well. And you also have NFC with your Apple Pay. So all of your little bells and whistles are on here. Wireless charging is on board as well too. So you have all of your little flagship features. All right, so lastly, I want to go ahead and talk about the battery life on here. So surprisingly, this phone does have pretty good battery life. As always, I do like to break it down. So if you buy a used refurbished phone, the battery health needs to be 80% and above. If it's below 80%, you need to return it. Or if you want to keep it, you can go ahead and replace the battery. But usually once it's under 80%, it's usually just not good anymore. It's usually dying really fast as well too. So my screen on time on this phone has been pretty good. I was easily able to get around 6 hours of screen on time. And again, it varies on how you use it, if you're heavy on games or whatever. But overall, my battery experience was good. I didn't feel like I was running to the charger or anything like that. I was able to get a full day's use out of this phone, no problem. So the battery specs on it, just in case you want to know, it is a 3110 milliamp battery. It has 18 watt fast charging, and then you also have wireless charging on here as well. So overall, the iPhone 11 is actually a really good buy. Now that the price has gone down on this phone, I think the screen is fine at this price. I think most people, won't find an issue with it. The processor is probably the best thing about this phone. It's definitely still super fast. It plays any game you throw at it, performance-wise, bouncing in and out of applications, very fast. Cameras are still really good on this phone as well too. So for all your social media people, Instagram, Snapchat, your videos, pictures will look pretty good. And also, The design on here I think just looks absolutely fantastic still. So be sure to let me know, what do you guys think about the iPhone 11, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.